All right, ladies and gentlemen, back again. We are continuing with this video series, the Chigorin defense, according to Alexander Morozevich. I was going to do one huge video, but then I saw the video was going to be probably like 2, 3 hours. So I was like, you know what? I need to break this up for the people. So far, one, two, three, four, five videos. This is number five. So as usual, Uh, please like and subscribe. Check the links below. Of course, there's gonna be DVDs, linked to the video. And the DVDs and or books are going to be corresponding to this opening. Actually, in 2007, Alexander Morozevich wrote a book with another author. I forgot his name. I want to say Barsky, but I'm not sure. It's called the Chigorin Defense according to Alexander Morozevich. So I'm gonna um, post that link to that. So if you want to get the actual book, but these games aren't based off of the book. These are just his games off the databases that I've looked at and analyzed on my own, and I hope the enthusiasm, excitement runs off on you a little bit. So now we're in 1999, and this is the from the German Bundesliga, and with the white pieces, legendary uh, former world championship candidate Alexander Belyavsky, and he was rated 2640 at the time, and Morozevich has the black pieces. He was rated 2748 at this time. Morozevich is in the top 10 in the world. So here we go. Knight c3. D takes knight f3. Again, one of the best lines. Knight f6 and e3. Not one of the best lines, but as far as getting an advantage, it's very solid. E3 is very solid. Let me not put E3 down, but I think E4 is the move. Either E4 or D5, either one of those. But to me, they're like neck and neck. But probably D5 more so. But I like the E4. But E3, D97 here. Again, I've discussed in another video. Here's why I really don't like the E3 line, because I think at this point, black can play E4 here. If he was forced to play knight E7, I think that this line is good. Because right here, white has nothing to complain about. All right, this is good for white. You can't tell me that black is it's a great position for black. A6, knight D2, of course. Black is going to try to expand on the queen side. White is going to attack on the king's wing. Excuse me. G3, preparing F4. And white's plan is pretty obvious. He wants to remove the queen from the back rank, maybe play queen e2 or c2 or something like that, and castle on the queen side, and just throw those pawns up and break open the king side. This is what we see happening here, all behind the strong, very strong center. Queen f3, c5, castle, c4, and d6. Um, what can you say here? Belyavsky probably should have just played the normal instinctive looking move of just bishop c2 here. But instead he goes to d6. B takes d6, knight takes c4. And then rook takes d6. Rook takes by Moro, c takes. And all of a sudden, Morozevich's queenside attack, it seems a little bit more dangerous than what white has going on the king side. Queen b6, f takes e5, queen takes b3. Now bishop e7, rook f e8 by Belyavsky. I'm sorry, by Morozevich. Belyavsky plays bishop d6, and this idea is very simple: is to play queen f6 and then mate on g7. Can't have that happen, right? Rook d1, and now g5. Rook to d4, a5, queen e3, and now rook takes h6. Check. Nice calculation by Morozevich. Queen e3 and now h6. And this is to make room for the king to get off of the back rank here. King h7. Notice how he clears the king off the 8th rank there. Rook d2. Check. And just nice tactical tactical blow here. Wow. And then rook takes c3. I've been looking at that for a few moves now. E6, and then simply rook e3, and Belyavsky had to resign. So what you see in a lot of these games that we've looked at so far, if you've been following along, is that um, several times Morozevich has been in some precarious positions. But what I noticed, uh, what I notice about his games in this line is that he often makes the position so murky, that yes, the white player might be better theoretically, or if you had like two engines set against each other, but the positions of like very complicated, first of all, and they're usually gonna be unfamiliar because who's playing the Chigorin regularly, right? So it's not like Belyavsky was like brushing up on the Chigorin. He might have looked at it, a round previous when he found out he was going to play Morozevich. He might have, or he saw Morozevich was in the tournament. It was like, let me brush up on the Chigorin. I think these two factors, the lack of familiarity as well as the just the chaotic nature of the position, favors Morozevich, at least in the psychological sense, because a lot of his wins have come like from these positions where he's not really better, but the opponent just blunders at some point, makes a move like this move d6 was not to be preferred. But a win is a win. It doesn't really matter how you get it. And this styles make fights, and Morozevich has a chaotic style where he just likes to create a lot of confusion on the board, and not only for the opponent, but he creates the confusion for himself also. And but he's just better at dealing with the confusion. Maybe he feels more comfortable in the chaos than the opponent. Let's look at the next game. So good win by him. Okay, now we are going to the year 2000. Um, Kramnik is in at his peak of his powers. Um, Close to winning the world championship. As we look through the crystal ball, we take a stop in our time machine. We see a young Vladimir Kramnik, rated 2758 with the white pieces. And this is the Fujitsu Siemens Giants tournament. Morozevich, the black pieces, 2748. Kramnik, 2758. So we know Vladimir is probably prepared for this. He plays knight f3, knight c3, e6, bishop f4, and we haven't seen this the entire time. Um, Basically, usually we've been seeing after knight f3, bishop g4, we've been seeing the line with c takes d5, followed by bishop takes f3, which is more traditional. So we've been seeing this line here, and then we've been seeing this, and we even saw um, Julio Granda Zuniga play this move right here. And then he won a fine game against Morozevich following this plan of knight c3 and f3 and e4 and so on. Here, Kramnik just develops another piece and puts more pressure on the center. e6, and then he just takes the bishop and brings the bishop out. At this point, bishop takes f3, g takes f3 is played. Bishop d6, bishop g3, knight g e7, e3, queen d7, queen c2, and now f5, inhibiting the or trying to slow down white's advance in the center. Bishop takes d6. Interesting is c5 is basically forcing the issue, um, with this bishop. So, for example, c5 takes, and then h takes g3, opening up the h file for white. This is a natural looking move to f takes g3 and just straightening out the pawns. However, strategically speaking, it doesn't leave too much for white because there's no open files. At least if you capture the other way, you have a ready-made open file for your rooks to attack upon. So I like that better. It's a little more dynamic. Anyway, bishop d6, queen d6. So castle's on the queen side. Moro castle right into the open G file. A6. And I think white has like a good stone wall, basically. It's recommended that when black plays the stone wall defense, and if white can get one of the remedies to that is if white can get a reverse stone wall, like it's usually much better because black cannot get the king side attack going, and white just ends up better, being a move ahead in exchanges, and usually he has the the better piece is good bishop against a bad bishop. What's interesting about this position, it looks like you had this stone wall, a reverse stone wall. However, black doesn't have a bad bishop, which usually will be locked in behind the light pawns, the light square pawns on c8. And then black doesn't have a bad bishop either, as his dark square bishop is gone. However, he does have this open G file to attack, and he has pressure here with the C pawn, as this pawn is not being used right now. So I think that white's attack on the king side definitely faster, in that him having this light square bishop in lieu of the light square pawns is better also. So these are more strategical options. So now the knight moves. Why? So that this pawn can participate in the fight in the center. With g1, c6, knight e2, knight f7, knight c8. So we see some maneuvering. The common sense thing is try to double up on the G file. C5 is played. Natural. H4. Trying to break open the king side. And here Kramnik has an advantage. Again, it's one of those positions where white has an advantage, but it's not really clear on exactly how to win. And so Moro thrives in the chaos here. But Kramnik is playing a good game. I mean, who wants to be in this position as white? Defending good. This move prevents the trading off of rooks on the first rank. Queen e7. Bishop h5. Knight to d8. a3 is played. Now here I like to move knight e5. I mean, this knight is now gone from the protection of this square. This is like the most natural move, is to hop right in here with knight to e5. Instead he plays a3, knight d7, and then king a2. And so, of course, after knight e5, now black has the option to trade that knight. Knight f6. Now he plays knight e5, knight d7, bishop g6. So there's a lot of pressure on the position here. Here, um, I don't think that white should allow a trade, and I don't know if this is winning, but close to it is knight f3 with the idea of knight g5. This is the downside of having cramped positions, is that you can't move as fast as your opponent. So although Morrow was able to defend the knight on e5, the idea of the knight going to g5 is pretty much unstoppable. Because if he goes here, with the knight on f7, you could just take. Um, so that move is like really obvious to me. I don't know why Kramnik didn't go for it. Knight f3, avoid the trade right in the cramped position, and then hop on g5, and with the extra pressure on h7. I think this move is winning. Knight f6, right? Let's look at it. Knight f6, knight g5, and then you just have this like long-term pressure on the position. Excuse me. So instead, after knight d7, bishop g6 was played, and Morrow played knight f8, guarding the pawn on h7. If he tried to play, and the idea here is if he tried to play knight takes e5, then Kramnik's gonna play that. Okay, so this is why he just left the knight there. It wasn't like he overlooked the trade or something. So knight f8, bishop h5, but now you have this repeat situation. So knight d7. So now Kramnik is on to the idea. He plays knight f3, knight f6, knight g5, knight e4 now. Knight takes, d takes, and now f3. And here black is close, very close to being busted in this position. Rook f8, e4. And like I said, you're dealing with the in prime of Vladimir Kramnik. But here again in the tough position, he plays e takes f5, e takes f5, and now he plays d5. And queen takes c5 happens. Now I'm not sure if he did that in time trouble. Simpler is to maintain the tension and just play, say, queen b3 right now. And there's not much black can do. Black is pretty much tied up in this position. Instead, this releases some tension. E takes, and then after d5, the c pawn drops. Again, there's no need to get this aggressive, but obviously Kramnik felt like he was good. He was winning in this position. Queen e5, queen d6, bishop takes, knight c6, queen takes. So now they go into this ending, and now it's black who's up material. So the tides have turned magically. So Morrow was like almost lost, and now he's the one that's holding, has the extra material and threatening to win the game here. And so black is up a pawn, and at this point, a blunder is a Morrow actually blundered here. Um, he should have played a move like rook e7 or something like that. The idea is after h5, bishop takes, he can't capture the he can't capture the so there gets a question mark, h5 question mark. He can't capture the piece. Reason is because a simple response, rook f2, and the rook is gone. So they immediately shook hands after that. Bobby Fischer would say, "Oh, that was rigged." He throws an H pawn up like that. But who knows what the time situation is. But okay, just summarizing that game. I mean, battle between two giants, young in their prime, is that Morrow was definitely in deep trouble here, and Kramnik kind of rushed the position with with uh E takes F5 and D5. Those moves weren't the best. That allowed Morrow just enough breathing room to survive, and Morrow definitely about surviving. He's definitely good when he's under pressure like that. So good game right there. Definitely from Kramnik. He just faltered at the end. I like his idea too with Bishop F4, which we hadn't seen up to this point. He just basically got all the pieces out and took his time. This game is pretty famous. This is at the 34th Olympiad in 2000 against Dorian Rogozenko with the white pieces. Rogozenko opted for C takes D5 line. We see this line right here, which we've seen before. Notice the willingness to, again, like I said before, willingness to sacrifice. This pawn could be captured, but Morrow's more concerned about development here and restricting, using his free piece play, and also restricting White's movement. So Queen G5. It's annoying as a bishop just can't come out. So H4, Queen H6, Bishop E2. And now, of course, after making that committal move at H4, it's hard for for White to settle his king on the that side of the board. Rook D8, Queen C2, Knight D5, and now Black starts his counter activity against White. Bishop E6. Notice the development, and this is one of the main themes of the the Chigorin activity of the pieces. Now, although the piece has been traded off, Black is completely equalized already though. So there's no look at his pawn structure is pristine. The pawns are perfect, and he has a 3-2 majority on the queen side. So that's even in his favor. So the opening has went extremely well for Black, so well that he can even afford to take the double pawns. He's not even worried about it. Gets his pawns on dark squares, protects his assets, and he gains some space on the queen side because later that 3-2 pawn majority is going to be effective. Notice the difference in the quality of pawn majorities. White has a 3-2 majority also on the king side, but those pawns aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So the two pawns of Black are holding up the three pawns of White just because the broken nature of the pawns. Uh, those pawns aren't going to be a threat. On the other side of the board, however, Black's three pawns are a threat to advance and create a passed pawn, and also notice the superiority of the Black rook on D8, cutting off the king from being able to cross over and defend. B5, and we see the majority marching. Now, again, notice the tactics in the position. If you grab this pawn, you'd be in deep trouble. You'd be lost already. Can you see why? All right, take a minute and think about that. You can pause the video right now if you want to do it. I'll wait a second. Okay, I know some of you chumps are thinking rook b8. That move's okay, but that's meant by a4. All right, that move's okay. This is the killer right here. Bishop g4. All right, with the idea of if the rook moves, let's just move the rook. That's the killer. That's the execution move. That means that White's only real response is to protect the rook. So he either plays bishop e2 or bishop c6, and you just win the exchange. Takes, and then you go after this pawn, and the game is over. This is why Moro played b5. So he's advancing his majority, which he wants to do, and he's very tactically alert. So e4 happened, and bishop e6. Again, same scenario. Rook c3. So now two pawns will attack, and just c4. Notice how the majority of black is steadily getting advanced. f3, king f4, rook c2, rook d4, bishop d1, and of course white is running out of moves. Pawns advance, takes, bishop e2, king advances, and look at just the difference between the pieces. I don't even have to say anything about this. Again, great tactical vision here. Gives up the pawn, and then plays rook h2 with the idea of just simply picking up the rook on c1, rook h1, and the piece has to go after bishop c1. And that was it. To me, this is probably Morozevich's high point in the Chigorin defense. Being a strong grandmaster, the Olympiad, in just such a dominant fashion in the ending. This is probably his best and most famous game in the Chigorin, and he's at the peak and height of his powers in the year 2000. Like I said, he's in the top 10 in the top 10 in the world at this time. Next game was from the 2000 version of the Bundesliga tournaments, and with the white pieces is Grandmaster Rustam Daltov. He chose the c takes d5 line, queen takes, and you see this line a lot. And black didn't have too many problems here, like almost instant equality almost. I mean, white has the bishop here, but not too many problems were created for black in the position. There goes the bishop here, and then these players agree to a draw at this point. Again, this line not really providing a lot of problems for black. This b takes c3 line. I think, excuse me, bishop takes c3 line. And I'm not even sure about this line if that provides a lot of problems for black either. This is probably a little better, as the bishop is not doomed to obscurity. Probably this is a try for an advantage here. Even though you are allowing the trade of queens, at least you have some kind of pressure here. Moving on. Again, Jerome Piket. This is at the Chorus Vacanze tournament. Piket is 26-32. This is 2001. Again, the c takes d5 line. Queen takes d5. And what's interesting, too, is as you go through the years, you see which lines were popular at the Grandmaster level. So at one point, it was this line. He chose to take with the pawn, which strengthens the center a lot, but then you have to kind of redevelop that dark square bishop. f3, real simple plan to play e4. So again, you have the gigantic center, which black has to fix immediately and tear down. Meanwhile, he will try to organize his pieces in a way where he can get past the center also. c4, and we see already black trying to occupy those squares. Queen b3, and now c5. And ideally, what you want to do here as black is you want to replace the queen on d6 with the knight. Okay, that's the proper way to blockade. And this is a well-known theme that goes back years and years. I mean, there's like old Botvinnik games, where you see this theme. It's known as blockaded security, where there is a pass pawn, but that pass pawn isn't going anywhere because the knight is placed on d6. So eventually the queen, has to, queen is too important to be stuck on d6 blockaded. So usually you want to have a knight there. That's the best piece because the knight not only blockades, but it also puts pressure on the E and C pawns. Knight e2, f5, there's the break. Knight c6. I'm sorry, knight c6. Knight c3, b6. Bishop d3. Knight goes to g6. g3 keeps him off of f4. So it's important for white because if it's important for white to maintain the pawns, maintain a strong center, and to also keep black out of the position. If black is able to get around those pawns somehow maybe let's just fantasize a bit, get his knight to d4 or something like that. Get a pawn here and then get the other knight here. This is called playing around the center. If he's able to play around the center, then white center is no good at all. All right, and it definitely be worse. So he's trying to keep black at bay. Queen e7. Exchange, takes, rook takes. And now knight e4. Of course, this looks provocative, right? g4, but that would just be met here by either rook takes. Again, you got to be willing to sacrifice, or more obviously queen h4 check, and then let's say at the king d1, rook takes with this discovered check opportunity here, and knight c4, and black has excellent compensation here for the piece. I think he has more than enough. So Piket felt the same way, played knight e4, and now knight f6, bishop g5, queen f8, takes, g takes, castle, and now Morozevich finds himself in a kind of awkward position here. White has managed to trade off a few pieces, get castled, and now he has this passed pawn here that's not being blocked, not being blockaded, and his rook is in an awkward place on f5. So rook h5, now h4. Again, Piket has done an excellent job of keeping the black pieces out of the position. Rook h6, h5, knight e7, g4. Notice again, the pieces cannot get in a position. f5 by Moro, and now Moro decides to attack the rook. F takes e4. Morozevich gives up the exchange in order to penetrate the position. Queen f4 check, king b1, and again the exposed king forces white to have to play exact. So right now white is a bit better here, but he got to play accurate. Better, of course, is just bringing the piece to the g file, rook hg1. So he played queen here, d3, and now knight f5, rook d1, and finally, after all those moves, there's the move I was talking about, the blockaded security, knight d6. Notice the knight is very strong in holding up this pawn, but simultaneously guarding these two squares and putting pressure on this pawn. Rook hg1 check, king h8, rook g7, queen takes h6, rook d7, and now rook f8. And now it's black, the dangerous pass pawn. Notice how black's pawn in the f file is now blockaded. Now what? Easy. Queen f6, h6, f2, rook f1, check, knight e4, queen d3, and the rook drops. So just real bad turn of events for white. Um, h6 was definitely the mistake there. Um, Again, it looks like a time trouble situation. I mean, he probably should have played the move, get the rook out of there, because right now it's in this check, where he could drop the rook. It looks like one of those knee-jerk time reaction moves, and if he didn't want to move the rook, just play queen here, which guards from the check. Although I believe that black is better here at this point already. So after queen c2, e4, and these two pawns are not going to be stopped. So instead he did that, and then played queen f5 checks, king a1, and now the idea behind Piket's h6, which showed it as kind of like it looks like a speed chess move, like time was dwindling and he was trying to swindle Morozevich. The idea, of course, behind that move is a queen, queen here, then you got this check here, and then this perpetual at the king g8, and then you can laugh about that one. Queen f5 check, king a1, but then knight e4 happens, queen d3, and then now he just grabs the rook. Queen takes e4, and then queen f5, and then again rook takes f2. It's a blunder, because he's probably thinking he'd get this perpetual, but not thinking that after queen takes e5 that the queen would just return. So it definitely, and the game ended on move 40. So it definitely looks like a couple of time scramble type maneuvers. Even here, instead of knight e4, knight c4 is even stronger. Just snatching the pawn. And then queen takes c4, queen takes d7. So again, in the chaos, Morozevich pulls it out again. But again, here he's like he's in deep trouble at this point. So again, Moro is just a magician, because some of these positions are like, whoa, like you do not want to be in these positions, like, But he takes chances, and sometimes they work, sometimes they do not work. All right. Again, same tournament. That was chorus. That was the chorus Viscount Z tournament, round 1. Now 6 rounds later, round 7, he meets up with the younger Viswanathan Anand, 2790 at this point. So I think Anand was maybe 2 or 3 in the world at this time. Very strong player. Anand goes with the aggressive approach, classical approach. This is the approach I like. And I think white is just better, just right out the gate. But you got to prove it, right? So already, black is organizing his play on the queen side while keeping his king in the middle. And that move kind of forces black to get out of the middle. Of course, the idea here, you see he's threatening bishop takes f7. That forces the king to make a commitment. Morozevich tries to get his queenside counterplay going, and he does a good job of keeping white occupied and defending on the other side of the board. And so after a few more moves, these players drew. So good game. Anand wasn't able to secure any kind of great advantage in the position, and Anand played aggressively enough. Again, notice the type of blockade. Again, you see the pawn at d6, and you see it blockaded by the knight here. It's a common theme. You see that a lot in the Chigorins, especially when you're playing against big centers. You have to be able to blockade. Personally, I wished in this game that instead of queen b3 here, that Anand played rook g1 first. Then, to force g6, or at least provoke it, and then play queen b3. He never got his attack going on the king side. I liked White's position here, but he never got it going all the way, and then wind up moving his rooks to the center, etc. Go through this one quick. This is a blindfold game with the white pieces. The old-time grandmaster Lobron, who's 25-48. By the way, Morozevich, this is 2002 with the amber blindfold. Morozevich is probably one of the great blindfold players of all time, if you didn't know. So we have this line, knight c3, d takes e4, and d5. Of course, another option is e4. Yeah, e3 too. So queen takes c4, solid position for black. Again, I don't think this position is too scary for him. And like I said, I'll just go through this game quickly. Not bad for a blindfold game. But Morozevich did a good job just, destroying the center, and now it's just equal. And again, I like to say that when things go right in the Chigorin, like especially in certain lines, the game looks like, like it could have been like a Gioco Piano or Rui Lopez. It looks like it could have been an e-pawn game. And these players went on making some blind moves, trades happened, and good job by Lobron, older grandmaster, hanging in there against Morozevich. And at this point, black is winning, but again, it's a blindfold. He has his two pieces against the rook, and Morozevich wasn't able to convert, and the game teetered out into a draw. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It did not teeter out into a draw. It teetered out into a win for Moro. Actually, after this check, because it's mate in four. I hate saying that Lobron overlooked the move because it's a blindfold game. What I meant to say is the game was drawish, and what happened is Lobron blundered. Like he would have been able to hold, but he blundered in position. Okay, we are nearing the end of our journey here. Here we're at the FIDE World Cup 2002, and with the white pieces, Indian Grandmaster Pentala Harikrishna, 25-51 versus Alexander Morozevich at 27-07 at the time. Now, I'm not going to show you this entire game, but what I do want to show you is just the opening real quick, which you should be familiar with by now. This line with Bishop g5 is not any problem really for black. Bishop e7 is playable here, or f6. Moro goes with the more aggressive move. And at this point, black just doing just fine out of the opening. But what I want to do is bring your attention now to move 42 right here, and it's black to move. So Morozevich here is this position has deteriorated somewhat, obviously, and although the material is even, it's white who is pressing and putting pressure on the position. As you can see right here, this pawn is threatened, and at this point, in order to put a counterattack against his D pawn, Morozevich played A5, hitting the knight. A knight hopped back to C2, and then he played the move knight E takes D5, which was just an egregious blunder here. Of course, based on the miscalculation that somehow the knight couldn't be captured. And after just simple queen G8, queen D8, the knight was just captured. And then after queen takes G8, you had the fork here. Knight E7 check, king D7, knight takes G8, knight D5, and king B3. And Morozevich was just down a piece. Now it seems that after, basically after 2000 or so, that Morozevich pretty much gave up on the Chigorin, and because all of the rest of the games are pretty much like rapids or blindfolds, and he wasn't even playing that as much. He plays the Albin more so than the Chigorin. Again, let's go to the next one. Here's another one against Mamedyarov. This is in 2008. Again, we went all the way from 2003 to 2008. So we could say effectively that and this is a blindfold. So we can say effectively that Morozevich gave up the Chigorin basically after 2002, after this loss to Harikrishna, which was definitely a tragic loss because this was an FIDE World Cup, a serious game, and we can say he pretty much gave that up. He tried it in a blindfold. He did beat Lobron, who's an older grandmaster, but again, a blindfold is not the same as serious chess. And again, in 2008, we see here him going against the younger Mamedyarov with the who has the white pieces. And just briefly, Mamedyarov chose this line. And Morozevich was able to draw this game in a blindfold. Now, I'm going to take you to the last hurrah, and this is the last time that Morozevich played the Chigorins, at least in a serious tournament. I looked, try to find some additional games, and this is in 2015. So all the way from 2008 to 2015, couldn't find any. From 2008 to 2015, I couldn't find any games for Morozevich in this line. So he's definitely, we could say, he definitely put the line to rest. Here in this game, this is our last game, and then I'll be uploading the video series. I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 parts to this, but we'll try to get them all to you. So anyway, this last game, Anton Gorelov 2700, Morozevich 2711 at the time, and this is 2015, the Karpov Belyavsky tournament. Gorelov went with this line. So one of those nice solid lines here. And I like the chances for white here as he's opening the lines for his bishops and rooks. Bishop G2, D takes, A3. And now black gives up the bishop here, strengthens white center. And the battle is on. So we see the move F4 here, opening up the bishop. This line on against the C6 bishop. Excuse me, the C6 knight. Knight D5, and now queen takes C4. Knight a5, queen a2, and black's job is to try to make something out of the weakness on these light squares and also attack the center. The center must be compromised if black is to have any chance. So c5, bishop d2, and now he bypasses with the move c4, which relinquishes some of the pressure and tension off the center. White responds with e4 and knight e7, and now his idea is to play f5. So he fixes the c pawn, and now he's gonna hit it again with f5, and hopefully he can paralyze the white center and then work around it. So castle f5, now rook fe1, rook f6, rook ab1 attacking the b pawn, queen comes up to d7, now e takes f5, and now knight takes f5. E takes f5 is playable, but this pawn would definitely have to be watched like for a serious amount of time. But it's definitely an interesting alternative because black's pawn structure is really good here. He doesn't have to worry about a backward e pawn, so definitely an option to consider here. Morozevich probably was worried about this pawn being free, especially going toward the end game, but it's a double-edged situation. He takes in a more dynamic fashion, but he leaves the e pawn backward now. b5, b6, queen c6. And right here, Morozevich, I believe, is equalized. He did a good job of, limiting the impact of white center. The e6 pawn is doing a good job as far as just restricting, especially the d pawn, and the f pawn for that matter. His pieces are all in the game, so white. It's not like white center has pushed him off the board. Like he's got his knight on b3. It's a little bit out of play, but nevertheless, it's in the white territory. And he has his rooks well placed with pressure on the f file. And so he's done a good job dealing with the large center. d5. E takes d5. So we can see why the e pawn was left there to deal with that. Rook e takes d5. And now rook h6. Queen d7 offering the ending. Queen f6. And now rook takes b5. And black's position seems to start to deteriorate after pretty much after white plays rook e takes d5 and just kind of starts taking more and more territory, first with the possession of the d file, then after rook h6 he played queen d7 offering the exchange of queens. Rook d7 was perfectly feasible also. And then now rook takes b5. Queen took on c3. Bishop came to e4. And we see now with that, as the position continues to open, that the bishop pair just gets stronger and stronger. The long distance pieces. And you see the knights struggle to have a place in the game. You just have that knight on b3, which looks impressive, but it's kind of off to the side a little bit. If that knight could be established on d3, it'd be a different story. And then the f7 knight, forget about it. There's really no place to go with that. So Morozevich is in some difficulties in this position. Rook b7, a4, and now rook c7. And now we can say that white just has a nice advantage, if not winning already. It's almost impossible to hold on to the C pawn for black. So Moro just gives it up. Rook takes C4, Queen E2, Rook C2, Queen H5, and at this point, Morozevich just has to try to get lucky, which he does by placing his pieces around the king. Rook H6. Now H3 is played, and this is one of those examples like where you could get lucky. Sometimes F3 is definitely better because F3 protects the bishop on E4 and the rook on C2 shuts down the attack on H2. Instead he did H3, and Moro could at least traded queens here, even though he would have still been losing. Instead he goes berserk, plays G5, and White doesn't even play the strongest move. He could have just took, but after rook G1, again, he should take the pawn, but it's understandable why he doesn't want to go into an ending. Rook takes G5, powerful tactical shot. Of course, if Queen takes D5, pawn takes G5, and the rook on H6 is still attacked. So King F8. And now he plays rook takes here. He could have played queen takes D8 too. Rook takes D7. Rook takes H6. So now the game gets simplified in a way that's really good for White. Moro could have simplified it before himself, and it would have been a little better for him. But now it's really good for White. And so he's just up, 2 pawns. Got the bishop here, and there's just no way that Moro is going to be able to hold this game. And just show you the rest of the moves. And after F5, Morozevich resigned. So this was basically the last game that I have on record. Anyway, so it's 2018 now. And so it's been at least 3 years since we've even seen the Chigorins. I don't even know if he's been playing it in like these blitz tournaments or anything. So let's wrap this up. This has been a long video series, but nevertheless beneficial. And for those of you interested in the Chigorin, like don't be afraid, to play it. But as far as at the top levels are concerned, you don't really. Morozevich was the last one, holding the fort, so to speak, on that opening. And who knows, maybe there'll be another strong GM one day that revives the opening and trust it again. But what we can say is that in general, that it seems like White's control in the center is just White has figured out ways to control and maintain his center, and Black has some counterplay, but maybe just doesn't have enough counterplay, to persuade Black to trust the opening as a steady part of the his repertoire. Black does get in some difficult positions. In some of the games that Morozevich won, he was in worse positions, and just due to his just ability and talent, he's able to turn the position around by making the positions murky and such. And of course, if somebody is really trying to be in the top 10 or make a living off chess, it's hard to keep winning by pulling the rabbit out of your hat every game, especially in this age of engine analysis. The engines will like pick certain things apart, and it'll just be like certain lines, and you just can't really play them no more because you can see after 2002, Moro is pretty much done with the Chigorins, and you can see at the same time that's when the engines really started getting like super strong, and he probably just realized that I can't play this anymore, like in just on a whim, because he played it so much that everybody kind of knew that this was in the repertoire now, along with the Albin. Like he did the same thing kind of with the Albin counter game. He played it a lot. Then again, people say, okay, I got to prepare for this. People started preparing, and then it's like, all right, Now they've found the like one or two lines very strong against the opening, and you know uh, so there's difficulty against it. So let's wrap this up. And like I said in conclusion, again, I think that the center is too strong. The two bishops, and basically in a nutshell, I believe that the old classical school of thought is right in this case. That basically not keeping that pawn at d5, blocking the c pawn, giving up the bishop here so early, and then I like to add again White's mighty center in some lines is just too much for Black to overcome. Although Black gets fast development and piece pressure in the center. So I hope you like that. I hope you enjoyed that. It's very long, and again, please like, subscribe, and donate to my channel. Check all the links below, and questions and comments, or any type of opening suggestion, or if you have a chess hero and you want me to look at their response to a specific opening, uh, just hit me up in the comments below, and I'll see you guys shortly on the next video.